It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
These are the things we think if you're going to actually even approach the subject of purchasing a car, how do you idiot-proof and give yourself some ground rules to approach this in a well-rounded way?
I love it. And I think, Brian, the very first one that you started with, and I've heard you counsel so many folks as they approach this, is when it comes to purchasing an automobile, don't make it an emotional decision, right?
And look, the car manufacturers, the car dealers, they know this is an emotional purchase. That's why if you look at the ads, we're in the holidays right now. They do the craziest thing. You'll see a husband or wife give something and say, I want to surprise you. And then it's usually the husband, because for some reason I always put the husband, I've got a surprise for you. And then they go out and they have an SUV and a pickup truck in the driveway.
With a big old bow on it.
And you're like, what idiot buys a vehicle without talking to their spouse? But somehow we're supposed to celebrate this and think that this is where things are. So it's emotional. And then I remember, I can't remember if it was Volkswagen or whatever. But
Volkswagen,
they started with a little car on the guy's head, because it was
like
a car on the mind,
bump.
because it's on his brain. But then it keeps getting bigger, and because you just can't control yourself. So the first thing you have to do is make sure your practical side is going to win out in this war over your emotional side. So promise yourself that. You need to know, and we're going to repeat this several times in the show day, you need to tell yourself, we will not be buying this car in person. We're going to be talking about phone calls. We're going to be talking about email. You've got to keep the home court advantage. Use all those resources. You also need to understand that purchase price, trade-in values, all those things are much more powerful than the monthly payment trap. Bo, tell them what they do. When you walk on a dealership, what's the first question that a salesperson's going to ask you?
They always ask you, okay, well, what do you want your monthly payment to be?
Yeah, it's a trap.
Before you start talking about what kind of car, price of car, well, hey, what's your budget? How much are you planning on spending a month in car? Well, here's the dirty little secret you don't know. Just about any car they can put you in, they can fit it inside that monthly payment box. So if you're starting the conversation there, you are starting in the wrong place.
And that leads to the last thing, which is, look, a purchase transaction is going to have multiple components, and you need to be standing on guard. You need to tune up your spidey senses on all components of the transaction. We're talking about the purchase, we're talking about the trade-in, the finance, and even the extended warranty that they're going to throw in that last meeting. You need to be on guard through the entire process. That's the only way you're going to make sure that you don't walk into a deal that you'll financially be struggling with for years. It will be the tail that follows you around.
And I don't want to paint one too broad of a brush here, but unfortunately, in most circumstances, when you go in a car dealership and when you meet with that car salesman, the odds are that they are not trying necessarily to put you as their number one priority.
They're not fiduciaries. Nobody at a car dealership is a fiduciary. There's no legal obligation to ensure that you get the best deal. So let's jump into this, because there's obviously some steps we can take. That's the pre-steps. That's setting the table. Now let's actually move into step one, which is you've got to know your budget.
Yeah, and I love it, Brian. What you said is know your budget, not know your monthly payment amount. That's not what you need to know. You need to know how much can you budget to purchase this car for.
Look, car purchases, it's amazing they even call these things assets, because they depreciate so quickly that you need to get your mind right to understand that it is all about how much use you're going to get out of that. So that's why I tell you, know your budget, but also how do you view your relationship with your vehicle? But what do we tell people? Because I have people who tell us, I'm a car person.
Yep.
What does that mean that they shouldn't have a nice car?
No, and we hear that all the time, and you have to understand, there are some folks who think that when you purchase a car, it is a point A to point B, it's just a thing to carry you. I think, truthfully, Brian, I kind of fall into that category. I'm not someone who's always been super enamored with really nice cars. But some folks, they actually derive utility out of buying nice cars, and they like gadgets, maybe cars that drive themselves, whatever the case may be. There are folks who really like that. Well, if you're going to be someone who is a car person, you just have to make sure you understand what that means and how you can be a car person responsibly.
You just have to be you got to kick rear end everywhere in your financial
exactly
life.
Right.
Order of operations has to be right. You have to have your savings priorities already fulfilled. If you tell me you're a car person and and you're going ahead and you're buying the BMW, you're buying the Audi and those things early, I want you to understand any type of premium brand purchase like that, 12 months, same as cash.
Yep.
No ifs, ands, or buts. So understand that because cars lose 20 to 30% of their value in the first year.
Yep.
Like I said, it is almost criminal that we call these things assets because they are essentially disintegrating before our eyes. So you have to be very careful. Be a rock star. And the problem is most Americans have big eyes, small wallets.
Because the auto industry's done some amazing stuff. They've made them beautiful. They are fancy. They are fast. They are performance. They have all kinds of doodads. So it's easy. If you just start looking at all the stuff that a car can be or do for you, it's easy to get really, really excited about that. But just like you said, you have to keep your eyes small and your wallet reasonable when you think about it.
Well, the thing, and we're going to give a stat in a minute on some guidelines. I'm always troubled that if you base it off of the average American is using 13% of their income towards their car purchases.
And we know for a fact that the average American is not saving 13% of their income for the future to build financial independence.
And the army of dollar bills will appreciate and actually work so you don't have to work so hard with your back, your brains, your hands. Your car will not. It actually, no matter how nice your car is, it is going to lose value.
That's
so
right.
keep that in priority. So let's talk about, because the first decision people are going to ask themselves, am I buying a new car? Am I buying a used car?
And we don't think, there used to be some conventional wisdom that you had to do one or you had to do the other. We're not so staunch in that. We think that there are benefits to both. There's benefits to new cars and there are benefits to used cars. So if we think about when it comes to purchasing a new car, one of the best benefits is you don't really need to evaluate the condition of it. You know that it's a new car. You don't have to worry if the previous owner was taking care of it or, if a 16-year-old was driving it and burning out every time they took off from a red light or whatever. You kind of know the condition of the car.
Well, it is one of those things. I mean, let's kind of go through these because it is. And look, if show note prep, thinking about this now, we probably should have put the used car on the left and the new car on the right because the way I think about it is, order of operations wise, if I think about financial lives, you probably will, when you first graduate college or get out in the workforce, if all of your army of dollar bills or the money you're making is going into a car, that is horrible.
Yep.
We've already kind of alluded to that. So you probably are going to start in your pathing relationship with vehicle purchases, you're going to start with used. I know our first few cars, I remember both, you interviewed with me in a pickup truck. You showed up first day of work with a nicer car than I owned. You had an Acura, a pretty new Acura, so I was like...
It was still used, though. It was still used.
It was used.
But it was nicer than the F-150 I showed up to interview in.
So but it is one of those things, and I think that is the mistake that a lot of us make, is that you buy used, and that's good, because you probably got a much better deal buying that car used than you would have new. But there is going to be, I don't want you to skip steps, because I think a lot of times people graduate college, they think they need to reward themselves, so they'll think, I'm going to go ahead and buy a new car. I deserve it. I owe it to myself because of all this hard work. No, that is not the case. You need to make sure it fits into the rules and boundaries of your financial life.
And here's the deal. I was actually a responsible, sound financial decision maker even back then. But as a 20-year-old, I probably shouldn't have traded in the F-150 for an Acura. That's probably not what I should have done. That wasn't the perfect car for me, even though it was used.
It worked out. We all make mistakes. We're not all going to nail it. And that's what we're just trying to make sure. Where does wisdom come from? It comes from experience. So it's one of those things. We share with you the things we see with our clients. We share the mistakes that we've made, because Lord knows we've both made plenty of mistakes. And then we try to help you with it. So let's talk about these pros of buying a new car. Bo, kind of go through these, and then, I'll throw in the money guy flavor as well.
Obviously, number one is you don't need to evaluate the condition of it. Number two, you get the latest and greatest. It used to be the latest and greatest features, like you could have power windows or power locks, but now it's even a little bit different. And this is something you and I talk about all the time, Brian. In the automotive industry, safety features are advancing at a rapid pace. So now we have driver assistance and lane technology. So when you're buying new, you're getting really great technology, the latest and greatest.
Great point.
Normally, when you buy a new car, you get full warranty coverage, manufacturer's warranty, plus even potentially some additional dealer warranty stuff that they might add in there. And you have what we like to call the peace of mind premium. You just know that it's new. You just know that it's in a solid condition.
Truthfully, those last two kind of go together, because I think that's why I call it kind of an order of operations for vehicles, is you are probably starting off used, because look, you don't get a warranty on a lot of, you do on some used cars. I'm certified and so forth. But if you're bare bones trying to figure out how you allocate every dollar in the beginning, like I know over the holidays for Thanksgiving, I was trying to help my niece look at she needs reliable transportation to go to college. We're looking at used Hondas, used Toyotas, and we're trying to get something for under 10 grand. So, I mean, there's going to be some compromises. You're going to have a car that probably has 70 to 110,000 miles on it. So these things still might have complete peace of mind. But when you're in your 30s and you got your first kids, you've got your, you're worried about are the kids and your spouse going to make it to things safely? You're probably willing to pay a little bit extra to have a warranty as well as that peace of mind. So that's the premium. So when I see peace of mind premium, it's actually a con also with buying new, because let's talk about what the pros of buying used are.
Yeah, so the very first one that we all think about is used cars generally tend to be cheaper, and you can avoid all that depreciation. The old tale is, it drops 20% in value the second you drive it off the lot. And that's true. So if you can buy a used car, you're letting someone else pay for that depreciation.
That's exactly right. Let somebody else take that hit in the rear end, because there is a part that cars do reach a level where depreciation becomes less of a boogabear.
Yep.
And it's one of those things, I think probably after 3 or 4 years, the worst part of the depreciation has already occurred.
That's exactly right. And then we also know that, again, in the financial realm, car insurance tends to be less expensive if you buy a used car. If it's an older car, the price is lower, car insurance will be less expensive. And then truthfully, we know that when we buy used, we can actually get a little bit more car for the money. So maybe those features we couldn't afford on a brand new car, we could buy that on a car that's 2, 3, 4 years old.
This is something that I think can help our new car buyers as well, as understanding that last point on the pros of buying used, is that if you look at all the things the dealership is trying to sell you, whether it's the Premier package, Prestige package, or this feature, when you go in and you're pricing a used car, you'll notice they don't really care about that stuff anymore. That's really only because they kind of group all the options.
Right.
They give you a little bit, but it's pennies on the dollar from what you paid when it was brand new. So understand that. Keep that in your mind, as well as if you are buying a new vehicle, you don't want to get trapped in that. So, Bo, let's transition. Let's tell them, how do you actually know how much you can afford?
Yeah, so again, if knowing your budget is step number one, and knowing your budget, you really have to answer the affordability question. And you've heard us say this all the time. We have a very straightforward formula on how you should approach buying a car, and it is 23.8.
Oh yeah.
Now, but I think that you changed 23.8 recently.
No. I love, because this is community. We have a whole community of financial mutants, and they love sharing. So this was a comment on YouTube: is when we talk about 23.8, Adam on YouTube shared, this is his tagline: how to make your car buying great.
So say the whole 23.8.
How to make your car buying great.
Do you think we can jingle that, Reeves, and just make that like a ringtone that people can download?
We live in the Music City, we should be able to do that. But that is how to make your car purchase great, 23.8.
So, okay, if we know we're supposed to be 23.8, we thought, okay, well, let's kind of look at some of the averages. And so we know what the median household income in the United States is. And we said, okay, if the median household income is $63,179, that means that the median household can afford a car that costs $18,883. All right, that's pretty simple. 23.8, you put 20% down, you finance for 3 years, and you don't let the car payment be more than 8% of your total income.
Is that what America's actually doing, though?
But that's not the rest of the story.
You gotta keep up with the Joneses. You don't look as cool. Look at that thing. You saw how slow it rolled up in there. That's not cool. So what is the actual American doing?
What the average car loan is in this country? You see how fast that came in there?
And it looks good with those louvers.
It has louvers on the back. That's a throwback to a Preston of old. $32,119. So it's not quite double, but it is almost double of what the average median household would afford following the 23.
So think about it. The person that comes out of college makes this mistake from day one that you're trying to build wealth. You're already almost half behind here on where your cash, because this is, as we told you previously in the show, 13% of people's budget is going toward card purchases. We know that the average American is nowhere near saving 13% of their income. That's what I always say. It's not, we don't have a savings problem here in America. We have a priority problem with how people allocate their dollars.
Let's put that on a t-shirt. We don't have a savings problem. We have a priority problem.
Well, it is. I mean, it was true. Of course, Bo. I mean, I see things like this and it kind of gets my blood going here, because I know every one of you who's in your 20s, 30s, and even 40s, you can conquer this thing. You just have to make sure you're not making big mistakes like this that will help you fall into a trap that you just gonna have a hard time crawling out of.
So, and again, the rule is 23.8, unless, the one last thing, you've already said this once, but it's worth mentioning before we move on. If you buy a luxury brand, like a BMW, Mercedes, Tesla, fill in the blank, you need to be able to pay it off in 12 months. 23.8 does not apply to luxury brands. Luxury brands, you got to pay it off in 12 months.
Yeah, and the mindset on that is just that it doesn't make sense for you to get behind just so you can have a cool brand name.
That's right.
I'm trying to give you the ability to use, if you want to finance, that's because I understand that you might have kids riding in this, you might have your spouse, and you want to make sure that it's reliable. So sometimes new does make sense if you want that premium of getting you there and having the peace of mind by that. But you do not get to go buy a Tesla, a BMW, an Audi, or a Mercedes, or any of the premium brands when you don't have all the other order of operation things, the box checked on that checklist.
Love it.